Welcome back in here on the Salina Post Sports Friday Night Preview Show, presented by Kansas Wesleyan University. Earlier this week, we had a chance to sit down and chat with head coach Mark Sandbo of the Salina Central Mustangs to get his thoughts on a big win over Salina South and also to check the temperature on a huge game upcoming here against Great Bend. Without further ado, let's hear from Coach Sandbo and get his thoughts on this monumental semifinal matchup. So we have to start with last week, a 49-24 win over your crosstown rival Salina South. Your guys dominated on the ground. You pulled away late. You know, when you went back and watched the tape, what are the things that stood out most to you?
I think kind of the stuff that we saw on film is what we saw live. I mean, we had a really good game plan. Our staff put together offensively, defensively, special teams when it was needed, but only punting once and feeling like it was kind of our fault that we backed ourselves up in just some little things. We can chalk that up to the win, but scoring 35 points in the second half, feeling like we had an opportunity there to get them off the field late in the second quarter and possibly go down and go score and go 21-10. Instead, we get a holding call in the back end. They get a first down. They take it down and score at the end of the half and go up 17-14. But I think what I would say is most reflective for me is the resilience and the character that our kids showed. Going in at half, you could really go the other way. You could really go the other way after you're hearing all this noise all week, and then you're down 17-14. But our kids didn't. There was no finger pointing. There was coaching going on. There wasn't any yelling. Probably the most frustrated I was in the game was maybe that fourth or that third and 35 when we called the timeout. But halftime was really composed, really directive, really intentional. And then obviously our kids responded offensively and defensively. When you rush for 425 plus yards, I mean, that's a mauling of physicality.
All of this happened in front of an audience of about 10,000 people at Salina Stadium, another 17,000 online. What did you think about just the atmosphere and the way the community showed out on Friday?
It was incredible. What a great opportunity for our kids. What a great opportunity to shine a spotlight statewide on the Salina community. For people to look at and be like, man, that's where I'd like to go. That's where I'd like to play. That's what I'd like to be part of. That was an environment, second to none. And we talked about the potential opportunity. We don't cheer for South around here very much, but we knew that could be the case if they win, that, our kids could play as well as their kids could play in an environment that, they'll be talking about when they're 65 to their grandchildren. And that's the opportunity that presented itself.
I've had a chance to cover, you and your program here for the last 6 years. You've always had a saying, pressure is privilege. A lot of both this week as your guys travel to Great Bend to take on the number one team in the state and a team that ended your most recent deep run. Mentally, how are the guys balancing the weight of the moment with the confidence in their ability to go out and get this done?
Yeah, really well. And you would expect that from a group of 18 seniors. There's an emotional high of beating your rival and winning a game like that in front of people like that. But with this group, there was come Monday, there was a regrouping of, hey, now our eyes are on a different opponent. And, that takes leadership, that takes maturity. That takes a staff that is modeling the right way. And, I think with all that being said, we understand what's in front of us, and our kids are locked in on this red and black team.
Well, let's talk about that red and black team. So far, no one's really had an answer for Great Bend. They played in their first one-score game last week in a 29-22 win over Hayes. When you scout the Panthers on film, what are the first things that stand out to you right away?
Yeah, they have some electric players. The Premier kid stands 6'6", 6'5", 235 pounds. When you watch him on film, you don't think he's moving, but you have to remember 6'6" looks a little bit different because he's absolutely hawking people down. And then the Omnot kid, has a special speed and athleticism. Those guys are different. But then, you throw in the Kern boys who've been playing since their sophomores and freshman years. Now they're seniors. You throw in the Mitten kid, who's a terrific quarterback, been playing since his sophomore year. Like, they have pieces. that make them really special. And, for us to get a win in Great Bend in a hostile environment like that, we can't turn the football over. We got to score on our opportunities, and we got to play really physical and disciplined football.
I know, to the uninitiated, a lot of attention goes to Notre Dame commit Ian Premer, but this is a balanced, dynamic offense. What, in your opinion, makes them so good on that side of the ball? And, how do you slow a team with so many weapons like that down?
Yeah, they have the benefit of having a kid like Premer or Almach, where, I think where they can be like, we really don't, every once in a while, believe it or not, us as play callers, we're kind of like, man, we don't know what to call here. They have a little benefit. They can say, you know what, let's just do something to 14 and see what happens. And most cases, good things happen when you throw it up to them. But I'll really tell you, the guy that I think makes that offense go is their quarterback. He works off script, he works off schedule on times, and does a lot of good things. Who I'd compare him to is Griffin Hall. They're very similar, and when the Mitten kid's playing really well, like they're a tough team to get off the field.
On the other side of the ball, defensively, Great Bend has allowed 20 or more points just twice, only once since week 2. Obviously, you've got one of the most electric offenses in the state of Kansas, but how do you come into a game like this and move the ball effectively against a defense like the one the Panthers have?
Yeah, I think we match up really well against them. I think their defensive front is maybe an area to attack for them. Their second level, their backers are really good. Their third level is maybe even better and elite when you got the Premer and you got the Akmon kid back there, not to mention another couple corners that they can put in there that are really good. But I think how we match up with the possibility of running the football at them, being content, controlling the ball, being content with a 3 to 5 or 7 yard gain, and staying at it. Very similar to maybe what we did against South. We were maybe a little more explosive against South than we'll probably be against these guys. But there's got to be a real attention to detail that, hey, we got to be physical, and 5 yards is a really good football play.
Well, and last thing for you here, Coach, I know we talked a little offense, we talked a little defense, but overall, if you boil it down, what would you say are your biggest keys to the game to punch that ticket to the first state championship game since 2005 for Salina Central?
Yeah, we got to limit explosive plays. Anytime Premer or Akmon get the ball, they're explosive. We have to score inside the red zone. They really bow up inside the red zone. The field gets shorter. Premer gets to work down in the box a little bit more. When we get into those opportunities, we got to score. And then we got to create some turnovers. We've been really good. I think we've turned the ball over ourselves offensively 3 times all year. We got to turn them over. 3 times turning them over would be a great number. And then something needs to happen in the special teams game, whether it's a return or it's a forced fumble or it's a block kick. We need something special happening in the special teams game to swing some momentum here and there. But I think if we do those things on top of being disciplined, on top of being physical, on top of being fast, it could be a really electric Friday night for Salina Central.
Once again, that was head coach Mark Sandbo of the Salina Central Mustangs, and that will just about do it for this semifinal installment of our Salina Post Sports Friday Night Preview Show. I want to say thank you so much for tuning in, and just a reminder, coming up next here on KINA, you will hear pregame for Southeast of Saline's big semifinal matchup against Hoisington. You can also tune in for our broadcast of Salina Central at Great Bend. That game gets started with pregame at 6:30 and kickoff at 7 o'clock from Great Bend High School. You can catch that one on Salina Post or on the Salina Post YouTube page. Until next time, when we'll break down the state championship games, I've been Tyler Henry. This is the Salina Post Sports Friday Night Preview Show. It's brought to you, as always, by Kansas Wesleyan University. Back here on the Salina Post Sports Friday Night Preview Show, presented by Kansas Wesleyan, and we're joined now by SES head coach Mitch Gebhardt. Coach, first and foremost, thank you so much for stopping by today.
Yeah, thank you.
So, stick with me here. This is the only long question I'll ask you, but you and your guys are on a generational run. In the last 6 years, you've won 6 league titles, 6 district titles. You've gone undefeated in 6 regular seasons, won 6 opening round playoff games, 6 second round playoff games, and now you've just won a 4th quarterfinal matchup. What are some of the things behind the scenes that people don't see on Friday night that's enabled that success?
Well, I think it's a commitment of people, and not not just the football guys and the coaches and everything else, but it's a commitment of the community, getting our kids here, getting them here in the weight room, supporting us, all of those things that go along with it. I think a huge thing is the commitment our kids have made, our football players, and making sure that they are being their best selves, doing what they need to do to play at a high level on every Friday night. Our coaching staff is outstanding. We try to make sure that our kids are ready and prepared for every week. And like I said, it's everybody. Everybody's involved in this program. And if you come to one of our football games and watching the stands and everything else, our stands are packed. It doesn't make any difference if we're playing here or we're playing 2 hours away. Our people follow us, and it's a great situation here at Southeast of Saline, and I think that breeds for successful people. And we've been fortunate over the years to have good football players on top of all that too. But the commitment that the community and the people here have made to the football program has been outstanding.
Well, and after all that hard work, right, you and your guys reached the pinnacle of high school football with a 2A state title a season ago. What did that mean to you and your staff, and how long did you enjoy it before you got to work thinking about this year?
Well, it's just a continual work of trying to get better, and to win a state championship was a big deal. We've been close several times and just couldn't quite get over the hump, and to finally do that, it was awful exciting. I think for me personally, one of the most rewarding thing was we didn't lose the last game. And I think that was a big deal. It was really great not to have to look back and go, God dang it, if I'd have done this or that or something else, maybe we could have won that game in double overtime, or we could have scored another touchdown a couple of years ago and got to the state championship. But it was a great feeling. You asked me how long we enjoyed that. Well, I think you always do. Number one, but number two, obviously in late December, early January, we started prepping for this year.
Well, and speaking of, prepping for this year, one thing that I feel like goes kind of under the radar, I read a lot of the other pieces that are written around the state. The guys get a lot of credit, you get a lot of credit, but you've had the same coaching staff for, really this entire run. Guys like Potachik and Douglas and Jacobson and Baird and others. What has it meant to you to, be able to go through this whole run, put this whole thing together with the same group of guys by your side?
We've had the same exact coaching staff for 12 years. So I've been here 16. We've had the same guys for 12, and I'm pretty proud of that. I won't say we were friends when we started, but we're pretty darn good friends now because we spend so much time together. But what a great staff that I have. You mentioned all their names there, and what a great staff these guys are. They're all about making kids and players, and not just football players, but everybody that comes to the school better. And when you get to spend time with those guys, good things rub off on you. And I think our kids feel that. And on top of that, they're good football coaches. They're very knowledgeable, and they want to do things correctly. And when you put all those things together with a coaching staff, that's a big deal.
Taking a look at this season specifically, with the group that's kind of picked up and carried the banner this year, they're 11-0. They're on the precipice of a return to the state title game. What's impressed you most about the work that this group of kids has put in?
I think work ethic. Some of these kids started playing when they're freshmen. They played on a team that lost in double overtime when they're freshmen, and then just have continued through this program. And not just the guys that are seniors, but all these guys. The work ethic that they have and wanting to do things correctly, and you can make an adjustment with them, and they understand how you're trying to adjust. They play a lot of football downs, whether it be in JV or varsity, or when they're in fourth grade. They played a lot of football downs, so their knowledge of the game is pretty high, and just they continue to work. You keep asking something from them, and they keep giving it. And I think when you have those things set up, you're going to be successful.
I can't not ask you about the season that Grady Gebhardt's put together. He's rushed for almost 2,000 yards, caught 26 passes for another 587. He has 42 touchdowns, 42 two-point conversions, which is impressive enough before you remember that he has 62 tackles, 10 for loss, and a punch-out. What are you feeding this kid? And if it's not the Wheaties, how is he taking his game up again this year?
He just loves football. It started in first grade in flag football, and then watching his brothers play also. And he's been a leader for us for a long time. There's a lot of guys on this football team that just try to do things correctly every day, and he's one of them. He just continues to work hard. Obviously, he has his stats are very, very good, but that's team oriented. He doesn't get those yards if you don't have guys blocking, and if guys aren't blocking downfield, he doesn't have long runs. But he's worked his tail off. He's worked hard to be where he's at. This is what he wanted to do. He wanted to be a good football player his whole life, and he's just continued to work his skill and continue to get better.
I know the plan was to run it back with the same backfield. You lost Gannon Jacobson midway through the season. That's a big blow, not just at quarterback, but at safety as well. But, Tiernan Potacek has come in. He has played excellent football. How confident do you feel riding a backup quarterback into what could be the two games that lead you to a third straight state title?
Losing a player like Gannon, and not just a player, but he's such a great person, and then a great leader for this football team, and has been, and to lose him was just it's something that you never want to happen as a football coach, to do that. But he's been part of this program since he was little, and to lose him and not to be able to play. But we didn't lose him. That kid is at every practice. He's making sure we have everything we need at drills. He's an extension of our coaching staff now, and what a great situation we have with him, because he's playing the game. A lot of us coaches are getting older and older, and we haven't played the game for a long time, but he's there, and he understands what the players are going through, and he's so mature that we can talk to him about different situations and things like that. He's a great person to have. Yeah, we'd love to have him out on the field, but he can't be. But he's just kept himself part of our football team. And then second part of that question you asked, do I have confidence in Tiernan? Absolutely, 100%. As soon as Gannon was done in the game that he got hurt in, we injected Tiernan into the offense, and we haven't called the game differently since. We called the games the same whether Gannon or Tiernan are in there. So we have full confidence in Tiernan. Tiernan's got half the snaps in practice for the last 2 years, and still does. And then he's played a lot of downs for us, and he was playing a lot of defense anyway. So we have all the confidence in the world in Tiernan Potacek.
Well, here we go. You're one win away from a return to the state title game. We're down to the Final Four in every division of high school football. You got a big game with Hoisington this week when you have a chance to watch the Cardinals on tape. What stands out to you, and what would you say are the biggest keys to the game to get back to that state title game?
Well, when you talk about 2A football, Hoisington's always mentioned, and have been for 20 years or more, probably more than that even. I've been here for 16, and you're always talking about Hoisington. So football tradition, Hoisington's got that. They have great support from their fans also. Their coaching staff is outstanding. Their kids believe in what they're doing. They check all the boxes as far as being a very good, very, very good football team. And you gotta make sure that we do everything we need to. For this group of Hoisington football guys, if you look at their offense, they do a great job of running the football, and that's what they want to do. They want to establish the run and be physical and pound you. But they've got a lot of athletes all over the field also, so they're gonna pull up and throw the football more than they have a lot of years, especially more than last year. And so you got to be fundamentally sound in everything that you do. Defensively, and they're still going to gain yards on you. You got to understand that. Defensively, they're going to be physical. They're going to be big up front on both sides of the ball. They're going to run downhill. They're going to make tackles. Do a good job defending the pass. So they're complete both offensively and defensively. And their kicker kicks the ball in the end zone a lot also. So their kicking game is outstanding. We're going to have to be playing at a very high level to be able to play with Hoisington this week.
Well, Coach Gebhardt, thank you so much for your time, sir, and best of luck to your Trojans here tonight.
All right, thank you.
Once again, that was Mitch Gebhardt, head coach of your Southeast of Saline Trojans. We'll step away, but when we return, the Friday Night Preview Show rolls on. It's presented by Kansas Wesleyan University. Hello everyone and welcome in for a very special state semifinal edition of our Salina Post Sports Friday Night Preview Show brought to you by Kansas Wesleyan University. We have got a lot to get into this week, a full slate of quarterfinal games to talk about from a week ago, and let's go ahead and start there. We had 6 teams from our area enter quarterfinal matchups with a chance to make it to the Final Four, and 4 of those teams did in fact advance, and let's start it off with our biggest matchup from last week. Salina Central defeats Salina South 49-24 in a wild game. There were 6 lead changes in this matchup. Cooper Reeves ran for 5 touchdowns, and it looked like the old Salina Central teams of the early 2000s as the Mustangs rushed for over 450 yards and 7 touchdowns. On their way to a 49-24 win, they advanced to a big semifinal matchup that we'll talk about in just a bit. The Salina South season comes to a close at 3-8, but let's give the Cougars their flowers. They were excellent this postseason. A team that finished the regular season just 1-7 somehow bounced back. They got their second and third wins of the year in the playoffs against top 5 opponents in Class 5A. Southeast of Saline, boy, they took care of business. The defending 2A state champs were not playing around. They eliminated Phillipsburg last week by a final score of 48-6. Southeast of Saline in this game had over 300 rushing yards. Grady Gebhardt accounted for 172 of those and all 4 rushing touchdowns. Tiernan Potachik, meanwhile, went 13 of 17 in the passing game, 158 yards and 2 touchdowns. But here's the impressive part. Southeast of Saline held a Phillipsburg team that wants to come in and run the ball heavy to 200 rushing yards and 1 touchdown. Phillipsburg did not complete a single pass in this game. They went 0 for 7 in the passing game as the Southeast defense completely locked them down and sent them packing in a 48-6 win. Down in 6-man, we had a bit of a bittersweet result. Lincoln defeats El Saline 46-44. That was another battle between 2 of our area teams, and you got to tip your cap to Jeremiah Miller, 21 of 37 for 292 passing yards and 3 passing touchdowns, but he was not done. Added 103 yards rushing and 4 rushing touchdowns, 7 touchdowns on the day for Jeremiah Miller in Lincoln's 3rd playoff win in a row and their 3rd playoff win in program history. They come back to defeat El Saline. Cats off to the Cardinals. They conclude another fantastic campaign at 9-2. And finally, down in the world of 6-man football, Tescott defeated Peabody Burns 52-30. It was a game that Tescott won 39-8 back in week 1 of the regular season. They were expected to win. They did win, and they will advance to the state semifinals for a 2nd straight season, which leads us here. We are in the Final Four around the state of Kansas. Everybody still playing football has a chance to win a state title, and the teams that win this week will play for a state championship next week. We still have 4 teams alive in our area, which I believe is a record, at least in the time that I've been covering high school football around the Saline County area. Let's get into the matchups. Following their win over Salina South, Salina Central at 10-1 will travel to take on the number 1 team in the state in Class 5A in the 11-0 Great Bend Panthers. And this game is going to feature some of the best athletes around the state. Central side, you got Cooper Reeves, the tailback who's already committed to be a Division I wrestler. He has over 2,400 rushing yards and 26 rushing touchdowns on the season. Junior quarterback Griffin Hall has been impressive. He has over 2,400 total yards on the year, and he has added 34 touchdowns. Well, who's lining up across from those guys? How about a 5-star tight end committed to go play for Notre Dame next year? Ian Premer, this is one of the most unbelievable stats you're going to hear today. He has converted 30% of his touches into touchdowns from week 7 on. There are a lot of good guys around Premer, both on the offensive side and the defensive side, including the Kern brothers, who have combined at linebacker for 230 total tackles. It's a Central team with a lot on the line. They are playing for a chance to go to their 9th state title game. They have 6 5A state championships already under their belts, and Central leads the all-time series with Great Bend 25-11, but the last game in the playoffs between these two was a Great Bend victory back in the quarterfinal round. That came 2 years ago. In case you're curious, opposite these two on the bracket is Baser Linwood at 11-0 and St. James Academy at 10-1, so the winner of these 2 games will meet for the 5A state championship next week. This game will be broadcast on Salina Post. We'll have full coverage 100% free, so make sure you tune in on the Salina Post or on the Salina Post YouTube page. Either way, you can catch the broadcast of this game completely free with Anthony Georges on the call. Meanwhile, in Class 2A, Southeast of Saline is 11-0. They will take on Hoisington at 10-0. Here's all you need to know about this matchup. The last loss for Hoisington to Southeast of Saline in the playoffs last season. The last loss for Southeast of Saline came to Hoisington in the playoffs before that back in 2023. Southeast has won 7 of the last 8 meetings, but this will be the 5th straight playoff meeting between these two teams, and both sides are looking to get back to the state title game for what would be a third time. SES is 2-0 in their state championship games. Hoisington is still looking for their first state title. They went to the state title game in 2020 and 2023. This will be another power run type offense, but one that is way better than any Southeast of Saline has seen so far. 52 points a game for Hoisington on the year, 55 points a game for Southeast of Saline. Both defenses are allowing somewhere in the realm of 10 points a game. And on the other side of the bracket, it's Nemaha Central, undefeated at 11-0, and Osage City at 10-1. Again, the winners of those two games will meet for a state championship in Class 2A. Down in 8-man Division 1, Lincoln at 10-1, taking on Sylvan Lucas, also 10-1. This is a game that did happen back in Week 7 of the regular season. It saw the Leopards take the victory 62-36. That is the only loss on the resume for Sylvan Lucas. Lincoln's lone loss came to Clifton Clyde, and this is a chance for head coach Colby Hamill and the guys to keep it going. They could very well win state in the same year where they win their first playoff game. What a feat that would be. The winner will get the winner of South Central at 10-0 and Hill City at 10-1. That is a look at your 8-man Division 1 bracket. And finally, down in 6-man, we have a rematch of last year's state semifinal between the Tescott Trojans and the Cunningham Wildcats. Cunningham won this game 58-12 back in week number 8, but remember, this is a rematch of last year's state semifinal, a game where Cunningham won by just 1 point in the playoffs. Why is that important? Because Cunningham won the regular season meeting between those two by a final score of 52-6. So we've already seen Tescott bounce back and play Cunningham a little bit tougher in the state playoffs. Of course, the winner of that game will advance to the state championship game to take on either 9-1 South Barber or 9-1 West Can. West Can are the defending state champions. Before we turn things over to our interview segments, here is a quick snapshot look at all 4 teams still competing in every single division of high school football across the state of Kansas. In 6A, Olathe Northwest will take on Gardner Edgerton. Gardner Edgerton are the defending state champions in 6A. On the other side of the bracket, it's a matchup between Manhattan and Derby. As we mentioned, for 5A, it's Salina Central and Great Bend, who will play the winner of Baser Linwood and St. James Academy. In 4A, Bishop Miege will take on Labette County, and Cape and Mount Carmel will play Wamego. And in Class 3A, Topeka Hayden will take on Santa Fe Trail, while Rock Creek looks to dethrone the current defending state champions in Andale. In 2A, it's Nemaha Central and Osage City opposite the defending state champions in Southeast of Saline taking on Hoisington. In 1A, there will be a new state champion as Rossville hosts Jackson Heights and Sterling takes on Smith Center. In 8-man Division 1, it's Lincoln and Sylvan Lucas playing against the winner of South Central and Hill City. In 8-man Division 2, the defending state champs in Axtell are looking for what would be, I believe, their 3rd straight state championship as they play Hanover. And on the other side of the bracket is Victoria and Hodgman County. And finally, in 6-man, it's Tescott and Cunningham to take on the winner of South Barber and the current defending 6-man champs in West Can. That will do it for a look at last week's matchups and this week's games coming up here. We will step away. When we come back, we'll hear from head coach Mitch Gebhardt and get his thoughts on Southeast of Saline's big run and really the dynasty that they have built here in Gypsum. That conversation when we return. This is the Salina Post Sports Friday Night Preview Show, and you're listening to it right here on KINA.